Titanic, The Shining. These two titans of film history combine to make the most terrifying experience known to man. A nu metal soundtrack. Welcome back to the Arctic Beyond film series, where I talk about films set in and around the Arctic. Ghost Ship is a 2002 horror film set in the Bering Sea, that bit of ocean between Alaska and Russia that paper maps would have you believe is the portal from one side of the flat earth to the other. And just to be clear before we get into this, Ghost Ship is as related to Arctic culture as 50 Shades of Grey is to healthy relationships.
It means that you cannot discuss anything about us with anyone.
They could have put the Ghost Ship in my bath, and it would have been the same exact film, except I would have been knocking on the bathroom door the whole time asking if they were done. I gotta exfoliate. But Ghost Ship is my kind of film, bafflingly stupid and a whole lot of fun, which the Arctic doesn't really get a whole lot of, so I'm very excited to talk to you today about Ghost Ship.
No passengers, no crew, no captain, no mention of anything in the ship's log. What do you make of that? A ghost ship.
Directed by Steve Beck in what would be his second ever and his final film, for pretty good reasons. Ghost Ship follows a crew of marine salvagers. They find shipwrecks, abandoned vessels, things like that, scrap them for parts, sell the parts. But before we get to our crew and really any of the characters, we have to talk about the opening scene. Now, there's a good chance you've probably seen this opening scene. It is genuinely one of probably the best opening scenes in film history. I'm not exaggerating. The opening scene is incredible. The first scene is so good, it really has you thinking, whoa, 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 whoa. Is this a good film? Is this? Wait, I was promised a terrible film, and this is happening. What's happening? Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. It goes downhill very quickly from here. But let's talk about this opening scene. I honestly recommend that if you haven't seen the opening scene of Ghost Ship, I do recommend that you go. Take 5 minutes. It's only 5 minutes long. I'm about to describe it and what I loved about it. But if you've not seen it, I think it's worth seeing it for the first time yourself. If you just want to stay, thank you. That's so kind. That means a lot to me. Now, let's describe some gruesome deaths. The vibe, the scenery, the music, it's all beautiful. It's the kind of party you really want to be in. There's this little girl played by Emily Browning. She'll come into this later as well. She's having a nice time. Initially, she's kind of bored. She doesn't know what to do. There's all these adults around. She's the only kid. But the crew seem really nice. They try and cheer her up, and the captain invites her to dance. And it's all lovely, and everyone's having a lovely time. And then we see a lever being pulled, and the atmosphere starts to change. The music suddenly gets more unsettling. All the movements start to slow down. Then we see the steel rope begin to wind and go taut. It's at that point, really, it becomes quite obvious how the rest of the scene is going to play out, but not in a bad way. And you start picturing what you think's going to happen. Then in an instant, the rope snaps, the entire dance floor of people is chopped in half. But the brilliance I find of this scene is that there's no screams. The music, in fact, stays quite delightful. In this few seconds, there's just the sound of rope moving and flesh tearing. You know that classic movie trope where two warriors, they charge at each other, they slash or they shoot at each other, and then there's that moment where you don't know what's happened. Everyone stands still, and then in an instant, one warrior falls. Well, imagine that, but instead of a 1v1 fight, it's a piece of metal rope versus 100 people. Then there's a glorious pause as everyone is literally hanging on by a thread to their lower halves, just hanging on to their final seconds of life. And the next 30 seconds, which in such a slow moment as this feels like an eternity because you're waiting, you know what's going to happen. But there's 30 seconds where it's just stillness. Again, there's no screaming. There's barely any sound at all. It's just withheld breaths, people wondering what the hell's just happened. We see, thankfully, the captain who was dancing with the little girl. He's managed to protect her. He's hunched over her. And then suddenly, a champagne flute is decapitated. In the background of the champagne flute being decapitated, that's where you see, just in the background, out of focus, blood first start to pool on one of the victims' chests. And that's suddenly when the gore and the viscera erupts. The blood starts to flow from all of these people, and the bodies hit the floor. And I really love that amongst this scene of horror, there's an interesting scene of levity that's still also horrific. As one man suffers the indignity, everyone else just gets coolly chopped in half. You know, it's kind of like, okay, I mean, if you're gonna go out in a stylish thing like that. One guy, the first thing to fall is his pants. For some reason, in his final seconds of life, he got pantsed by a ghost.
Oh my god, he pantsed you.
What did this extra do? You got 100 extras on screen at this moment, many of whom probably don't get on screen at all, and they're all being choreographed in this really cool death scene. Then he points at one old man and goes, "Take your belt off." And then as everyone falls, we get another circle further down into hell. Not all the people are dead yet. People's desperate upper halves are crawling around looking for their lower halves, looking for their loved ones, looking for the limbs that they've lost. There's one guy whose arm is detached from his body, but the arm has got a life of its own still, which, I mean, at this point you realize, okay, like, yeah, we're not exactly going realistic here. And then as a final piece of gruesome cinema in this opening scene, the last two people on the dance floor are the captain and the little girl. So we've seen the captain, he was hunched over, managed to protect the little girl. She looks up at him, she's like terrified, what's going on? We see the captain's face is just horrific pain and shock and fear. Although he was able to duck down and shield her, he didn't get low enough. And we see his head split in two. It's only at this point we hear any scream. It's only at this point we hear the little girl scream. There's been any dialogue. You'd barely even call this dialogue, but there's been no speaking. It's just been the singing. This has basically been a silent film to start off Ghost Ship, which really doesn't set the tone for the film that's about to come. This is stylish. This is cool. This is inventive. And it's not the rest of the film. So, Steve Beck, applause, flowers, garlands, medals for this opening scene. Well done. But I will be needing them back because of what happens in the next 85 minutes. We're introduced to our crew. They're the crew of badass blue-collar workers like in Armageddon, films like that. It's all, you know, sweat and dirt and abandoned families like real men.
I got a fiance waiting on me, remember?
The crew is as you'd expect. They fill those kind of archetypes. The film seems to be going for an alien vibe. You've got the tough but fair captain, the stuffy first mate, the pair of immature engineers, the charming guy who's the first one to die, and the protagonist, Maureen. She is the middle-ranked woman that takes things seriously, but no one listens to her, just like Ripley. Incredibly, one of those immature engineers, Carl Urban. Now remember, this film came out in 2002. You know what other film came out in 2002? Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. So in the same year that audiences got to see glorious Eomer in all his stunning, inspiring glory, they got to see this.
That's all right.
No way.
No, really, it's good. That's great.
The crew are at an Alaskan bar, see, this is an Arctic film, and they're celebrating getting paid from the latest score when a mystery guy approaches them. He's a very nervous, squirrely guy called Jack, and he lets them know he's discovered an abandoned ship in the Bering Sea, and he wants to hire this salvage team to, you know, get it and make money off of it, and he'll take a cut of whatever they make. And as part of the deal, the guy says, well, I'm coming with you. I insist on coming with you. And I'm so sorry. The guy who plays Jack, Desmond Harrington, I'm sorry, but it was really distracting how bad your performance was in this film. Every line of dialogue is spoken like a 6-year-old reading The Hungry Caterpillar for the first time.
What's our plan?
Anyway, the crew, they go to the ship, it's haunted, people die. Bye-bye. No, of course more happens, but the rest of Ghost Ship doesn't really warrant much else apart from some notable scenes toward the end. It's just not a very good film. But it's interesting looking up the history of Ghost Ship and the history of the production. The original idea was really interesting. It started out as a script called Chimera, and it was meant to be a psychological horror film, all full of tension and paranoia, without really any explicit gore or violence. The film would have focused on the same kind of thing: the salvage crew in the Bering Sea. The 4 crew members, all because of different reasons, all go insane over the course of a single night and all try to start killing one another. So it becomes this cat and mouse paranoid thriller where everyone is, if you like, the bad guy, because everyone has gone insane and there's this ghost. So there's no straight, okay, here's the innocent person. It's just, okay, what is going on? Who is going to survive at the end of this? Will they solve the mystery? Will they defeat the ghost? Which sounds really cool. That's a really interesting film that doesn't sound like it has an obvious, oh, you can predict where this is going. But the reason that the story was changed was, of all things, 9/11. The studio decided that the audience didn't want moral grey areas in their media anymore after 9/11, and I do feel for the cast because they actually all signed up to the original script. That was the film they were approached to make, and they agreed to make, and they were contracted to make. Then the script underwent these massive complete changes, but I guess that they were still contractually bound to make the film even though it had been completely changed. And, maybe that's why Desmond Harrington put in such a terrible performance, because he really didn't want to be there.
Ghost Ship.
One aspect of the film I do need to give good credit to is the practical effects. They put in so much work onto making this ship and making it look cool, and it really pays off. This isn't just a single cheap soundstage that they used. They built some cardboard, set walls or something and green screen the rest of it in. They built a massive scale model, including 2 full-size 100-foot tall recreations of certain parts of the ship. And the ship looking so good, it does a lot to make the first half of the film pretty okay. Because the first half of the film is just sort of very slow, atmospheric. Everyone's just sort of wandering around the ship, and there's hints of things going wrong, things like that. But because they are just walking around, the ship is, I'd hate to use the cliche, but the ship is a character in itself, just like New York is a character in the Spider-Man film. But the ship really is really good looking. And so it adds this element of creepiness. It looks dirty. It looks haunted. Well done for the effects. Really good job. When they were filming shots on sea, they have this little tugboat called the Arctic Warrior. Hey, Arctic film. I promise. I told you it is. Even though they filmed a bunch of it in Australia, it's an Arctic film. They got a boat called the Arctic Warrior. When they were filming these Arctic tugboat shots, they actually accidentally created a massive shark feeding frenzy. About 1,000 sharks started a feeding frenzy within about 50 yards of the cast and the crew. Hey, if I'm an actor filming a scene at sea, and on the first day of shooting, 1,000 sharks turn up, I'm calling it a success right there. The box office numbers are going to be insane. You have any idea how hard it is to break into the shark market? I'm sorry, but if the sharks are into this, the sharks didn't even go for Aquaman. But if the sharks are into Ghost Ship, I bet that the human figures are going to be ridiculous. Some creepy stuff happens on the boat. The situational awareness of the crew is really pushed to the limits of what is believable, and then they immediately forget all the creepy stuff that has happened to them when they stumble across a room filled with gold bars. And it's upon the discovery of the gold bars where the film really falls apart. The first mate tries to have sex with the ghost of the singing lady from the first scene, which, as you'd expect, doesn't go very successfully. Ghosts, as it turns out, don't make for the most generous lovers. Meanwhile, the crew starts to turn on each other because of paranoia, greed, and, because the crew start dying in some really weird ways, which that's one thing I just have to bring up. That great opening scene, as we've discussed, really cool, really inventive, and a very bloody scene. His intestines and blood. Oh, I was like, oh my god. Why is the rest of the film so tame and bloodless? One of the hallmarks of a good slasher film is the deaths, is you see interesting deaths. All of the crew deaths, apart from one, which we'll get to, happen either completely off screen or partially off screen. It's not horrific if you just get hinted at that all the people die and then someone later stumbles across their body. Then it's just kind of like, oh, they're dead. Anyway, at this point, the film's getting worse and worse and worse, but there is one hugely redeeming factor. Toward the end of the film, the little girl ghost takes Maureen on a full-on Ghost of Christmas Past journey throughout on what happened on that day when everyone lost a hell of a lot of weight. The next few minutes, I'm not joking, I'm not exaggerating, it's a new metal music video. In this video, we see the crew somehow getting a hold of a bunch of automatic weapons. Okay. Slaughtering all the passengers on board that weren't killed by the rope, and then turning on each other. In the end, there's only one person left, and whoa, the big twist of the film, it's Jack, the guy who came with them. Oh, he's the bad guy. That's the twist of the film. You see, it turns out that the ghost ship, before it was the ghost ship, found another ship that had had a similar fate happen to it, found the gold on board, brought the gold over to their ship, and then the same thing happened. What's haunted here? Is it the ship or is it the gold? It's what Jack tells us when, villain reveals all blah blah blah. Jack essentially reveals that he wants the crew to come on board the ghost ship, fix it up so that it can then sail to land, and he can, get more people on board the ship and kill them and whatever, kill more people. But that doesn't make sense because he willfully kills off crew members trying to fix the ship. And in fact, it was actually the gold which brought him from one ship to the other, which would suggest that the gold is haunted. If we reverse right back to the start, just wind your memories back, Jack went to that bar in Alaska to hire the crew. So hauntings usually, you're trapped in a certain location. You can't just go out and do whatever, because then it wouldn't be a haunting, it would just be a ghost doing whatever it wants. So Jack can go wherever he wants to kill people, but he chooses not to. He chooses only to bring people to the ship, because that's where the gold is, because that's what drives people mad. So the gold is haunted. So why does he need the ship to be fixed to be taken to land? Why can't they just do the original plan, which was put the gold on their little boat, take the gold to land, sell it off? The gold is everywhere. He can haunt a million places. Am I overthinking this? Yes, I'm overthinking this, but it makes absolutely no sense. Oh, and then just an extra, okay, we're going to make this twist as twisty and terrible as possible. It turns out that Jack is basically a middle manager for hell. That Jack's job, literally he describes it as a job. He has no passion in this. He literally says, it's a job. Oh, good. I do love it when my villain is phoning it in.
You collect ships, I collect souls. And when I fill my quota, I send a boatload home. This will make management happy. See, it's a job.
So Jack's job is to drive people to sin and then have them kill each other so that their souls are tainted and they go to hell, thus sending more souls to the devil. But he can't send off a quota of souls. Quota, he uses the word quota so often. Quota's not a scary word.
My quota.
It's not a scary word.
We may actually make our quota today, sir.
I've done my quota of murders today.
I have a quota more that I have to deliver for my silver mines.
No one wants a quota.
He can't send a quota of souls until the quota is filled. So that's why he tries to bring people to the boat to do the same thing, blah, 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 and keep building it up until he reaches the quota point, and then he can send off the shipment of souls to hell. This is a terribly inefficient business. He's been floating for 40 years trying to fill up this quota of souls. And as it turns out, he can go anywhere. He can travel however far it is to the Alaskan coastline. And so he could kill people wherever he wants, but he chooses not to. Is the devil so much of a stickler that he's like, no, I'm not actually that desperate for souls. I just don't like you, Jack. I just don't like you. I've given you the most long-winded, arduous job in all of hell. No one else is doing this. I've just stuck you in the middle of the Bering Sea, in the middle of the Arctic Ocean, because I don't like you, Jack. Carl Urban is killed in a really weird way. I said everyone else is kind of killed semi-off-screen. Carl Urban, his character's the only one to get killed kind of on screen in a really weird way. Again, while he's trying to fix the boat, he is fulfilling the task set by Jack, and the ghost ship kills him while he is doing it, so okay. Marine blows up the whole ship, and then Marine sees something which I never thought I would ever see in a film, never thought I'd ever say in my life, but here we go. The souls on the boat escape up to heaven, fly up into heaven. We see the souls flying into heaven, forming the Aurora Borealis. The Northern Lights are made up of good people's souls.
Yes, I should be. Good Lord, what is happening in there?
Seymour! The house is on fire!
No, Mother, it's just
my quota.
Marine is rescued by a passing cruise liner, so okay. Apparently one hasn't passed in 40 years, and then at the exact moment Marine needs one to pass by, another cruise ship comes by. Fine. Okay, we're at the end of the film now. The writers need the film to end. We see her loaded into an ambulance on land. She's kind of like, okay, whatever. And then as she's staring out of the ambulance, we see that the gold is being loaded up on land as well. Because after surviving 2 boat explosions, this gold has been retrieved. Gold sinks. And then they're loading up the gold, and we see that Jack is there. Oh, Jack walks past the gold, confirming that it's actually the gold that is haunted, which means that the original plan of the crew would have worked. They didn't need to do all this. He could have just said, yes, load up the gold on your boat and take it to land and sell it around the world. That would have worked. You idiot. There's a reason you're the devil's worst employee. There's a reason the devil hates you.
Everything the devil hates.
And it does raise the question, doesn't it? So Jack haunts the gold, so he came on board the second cruise ship, decided not to do the same thing on this second cruise ship. Did he get on board and think, all right, here we go again? Oh, he just refilled the shrimp. Oh, and the Nickelback tribute act are on tonight. I mean, you guys can survive this one. They really thought they were going to get a ghost ship too. They really thought it. I complained a lot, but that's because I had so much fun. These complaints come from a place of I'm having a lot of fun and this is crazy. So, if you like bad films, and especially bad films set in the Arctic, I do recommend giving Ghost Ship a go. If you just want to watch something actually well made, just watch the first 5 minutes. Thank you as always for spending some of your time with me and Lucy Lou. As always, stay safe. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. What do you say? What do you say, Lou? Hey, what do you say? Say bye-bye.